Hello class and welcome back to Algebra 1B Bootcamp. Today we're going to factor and solve quadratics. Now, being able to factor, we've spent a lot of time on this, so let's just briefly go through and review the different ways that you can factor. First, you can factor by taking out a GCF, or a greatest common factor. To do that, you look at your numbers and you think about what they're both divisible by. In this case, both of these numbers, 9 and 6, are divisible by 3. Since there's two x's here and one x here, they have one x in common, so you can take that out. When you take out the x and the 3, you have to write what you're left with, and that you determine by dividing. So 9 divided by 3 is 3. X squared divided by x is just 1x. Keep the minus sign. 6 divided by 3 is 2, and then the x's cancel out totally. So you have 3x times the quantity 3x minus 2. The next one works very similarly. You have to figure out what they have in common. So the 16 is divisible by 4, as is the 4. Since you have 6 x's here and 4 x's there, you can take out 4 x's. After you take out your GCF, then you write it out front, and then you have parentheses. 16 divided by 4 is 4x, and then 6x is on top, 4x is on bottom. So you're going to be left with 2 total, minus 4 divided by 4, and x to the 4th and x to the 4th totally cancel out, so you're left with a 1. And then actually this can continue to factor using the dots method. So when you're thinking about dots or difference of squares, since 4x squared is a perfect square, 2x times 2x is 4x squared, and 1 times 1 is 1, and you have a plus and a minus. So technically, this completely factored would be this. While we're talking about difference of two squares, let's do a couple more, just for an example. Whenever you see you have two numbers that are both perfect squares, you can factor by difference of squares. X times x is x squared. 5 times 5 is 25, so 5 and 5. To make sure there's no middle number, no x number, you have a positive and a negative. The same thing works over here. 4x squared is 2x times 2x, and 7 times 7 is 49. And you stick your plus and your minus. It's just a trick you have to notice. Perfect squares, and they're being subtracted. So then the next thing we have to think about is factoring a trinomial, which means 3 terms. Again, you always want to jump to your double parentheses. That's the goal. So then you think, look at your first number, x times x is x squared. And now you have to think of numbers that multiply to positive 32, but when you add them up, you get 12. So I just like to list them. 1 and 32, 2 and 16. I don't think 3 works. How about 4 and 8? 5 doesn't work. 6 doesn't work. I think that's it. So which one of these combos can give me 12? And it's this one right here. So we have a 4. And we have an 8. So look at your signs. It's a positive 32 and a positive 12. So it has to be plus 12 and, or plus 4 and plus 8. Now let's talk about factoring out a GCF. Oh, and you can always check yourself. Check yourself by using the rainbow. So 4x and 8x make 12x, so you're good. Notice all 3 of these things are all divisible by 2, and they're all divisible by an x. So I have 2x, and then x squared for this guy. 10 divided by 2 is 5. X takes out that x, so you have another x. The x is canceled. 12 divided by 2 is 6. Once you take out the GCF, then you want to go double parentheses here if you can. You can't always. It just depends. So you want to think of numbers that when you multiply to 6, but add up to 5. So the numbers that multiply to 6 are 2 and 3 and 1 and 6. And you got to think about which pair will give you 5. Well, 1 and 6 can give you 5, but since it's a positive 6, I put 1 here and 6 there, and I rainbow 1x and 6x, that makes 7. That doesn't make 5. That doesn't really work. Let's try the 2 and the 3. I put the 2 here and the 3 there. 2x times x is 2x, and x times 3 is 3x. 2 plus 3 is 5. So we got a plus and a plus. Now we want to think about our leading coefficient, not 1. So that's this case right here. So again, you jump to your double parentheses. Notice with this one and with this one, when we got to this point, it was just x times x. Here, this is 3x squared. Well, the only things that multiply to give me 3x are 3 and x, or 3x and x. So I got to pick the proper combo of numbers to give me 5, or sorry, to give me -2. Well, the numbers that multiply to 5 are 5 and 1. So let's say I put the 5 here and the 1 there. Let's see what happens. Well, 1 times x is 1x. 3 times 5 is 15. Well, 15 times and 1, there's no way 15 and 1 can give me -2. So that doesn't work. So let's back up. Let's try again. Let's try to put the 5 here and the 1 here. So 5 times x is 5x, and 3 times x is 3x. And, well, 3 and 5 can give me 2. I just have to figure out where to put the negative, because I have a negative here and a negative here. Since it's a -5, one of these numbers has to be negative. And I would say that this would be my -5 and this would be my +3 because I want a -2. So that becomes a minus and that becomes a plus. And there are my factors. And finally, you want to solve a quadratic equation by factoring, which is not too terribly bad. You just have to make it equal to 0 first. That's the key thing to always remember. So I'm going to rewrite this equation by subtracting this to the other side. X squared minus 4x equals 0. It's not 3, so I don't want to go double parentheses. And since I have an x here, I know I have an x in common, so I'm going to take that x out. Whenever you solve by factoring, you set each factored portion equal to 0. So your two answers, in this case, are x equals 0 and x minus 4 equals 0, which when I add 4 to the other side, I get 4. Let's do this one. Everything's on the same side, which is perfect. That's what I want. I have x times x. I need numbers that multiply to -18, but when I add them up, I get -7. Well, the numbers that multiply to -18 would be 9 and 2, or 18 and 1. Since I want a -18 and a -7, I'm going to say my 9 is going to be negative, and my 2 is going to be positive. So I say x minus 9 equals 0, x plus 2 equals 0. So x is going to equal +9, and x equals -2. And we'll skip this example. All right, go ahead, write down any questions you have, and I will open up your assignment for you.